I want to, though, dive into the stimulus now and take a look at the next round of stimulus packages here in the United States and what that looks like. So one thing right now we're seeing around the world, I want to kind of go broad first and then I want to go specific. One thing we're seeing around the world is support in the markets for a regular stimulus payment to citizens, shoring up wages from those who have been left basically at home right now while their businesses have been shut. Also subsidizing the wages and payroll for those businesses, making sure that healthcare is taken care of, all of those things. That's been happening in Australia, United Kingdom. It's been happening in Canada, Denmark, the Eurozone in general. Frankly, it's about to happen in China with a massive stimulus plan. So we are now hearing from the Vice President of the ECB. The Vice President of the ECB, the European Central Bank. Now, why this is important? Because it's very similar to what we've been hearing about from Jerome Powell in the United States, from our Federal Reserve Chair, calling on members of Parliament and others and the broader governments in the European coalition to pass stimulus bills to make sure that its citizens are taken care of. And so the ECB is saying, because of these moves, markets have responded positively. Because we've had these stimulus plans in place, we are surviving. Take a listen to the Vice President of the ECB.
Well, but now the perception is positive in terms, you have seen that over the last 2-3 weeks, the sentiment of the markets has improved. And I think that it has improved mainly because of the policy actions that have been taken by fiscal authorities and monetary authorities and central banks. And I think that it will depend as well on the way that the local governments and the national governments are going to implement the lift of the containment measures. So now the perception is much better, and I think that that's behind the improvement in market sentiment that we have seen.
Yeah. So because of this market sentiment, because we've seen stimulus plans, you have the European Central Bank saying this has been good. This sustained stimulus in Europe, in Canada, in Australia. We have the evidence now. The evidence is in. So, with all of that being said, there's been a growing demand, of course, in America right now for a second stimulus that is an ongoing, regular payment to the American people. A regular stimulus of $2,000, $1,500, something, that will start and be retroactive from March and going through the rest of the year and even into next year. 18 months worth. Will we see it? That's the great question. That's the great question. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news this morning, because you knew that this was coming. But unfortunately, we got word yesterday from Senator Roy Blunt, who had this to say about what he thinks is another stimulus plan and where the Senate will move on this. He says that it's likely the Republicans will not touch it in June. The Senate Republicans say it's unlikely in June that we'll touch a second stimulus plan. There's no hurry to push ahead with more stimulus packages. And he says it's probably likely that we wouldn't really work on this until August, according to Republican leaders in the Senate. Now, that's not Mitch McConnell saying this, but of course it is Roy Blunt, who is one of the most powerful senators in the Senate, and he is saying that we could see this not until August. Now, the reason I say that is because we have to look at the recesses that are coming up. So if we can't tackle this soon, remember they just got back from vacation. The Senate just returned on Monday. It's Wednesday. They've been back for 3 days. They're already thinking about their July recess. They get a 2-week break in July over the July 4th holiday. 2 weeks off, okay? Then they come back, and then they're off for all of August. How does that sit with you? Because we're not hurting right now. No. We're not hurting at all, so we don't need them to really be working on anything like this. But way to go, this coming straight out of the mouth of Republican leader Senator Roy Blunt, that we could see this until August. And he was kind of nonchalant about it, by the way. It's like, yeah, it seems like when we take this up, we're really in no rush right now. Really, have you looked around? Have you looked around to see what is happening in the United States right now? That August is okay with you? So I did say earlier that I had some good news. So that's the bad news part of this. Now, you know, I'm trying to find confirmation of that from any other senator. I haven't seen it. We did know that it would be until June, possibly July, where we might see some movement. We had heard that before. But they are back from break now. You have senators forcing the issue right now, okay? So this is what I want to get to, which is the good news. I think the combination of having the Federal Reserve saying payments to the American people, senators saying we can, Republican and Democratic senators saying that we cannot have just a one-time payment, that we will likely see some sort of a stimulus package, even if it's August, for crying out loud, that would give us a regular payment of $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Now, I want to play some sound from a couple of people here that I think is really important. We heard this week now from Senator Kamala Harris. Senator Kamala Harris, of course, is one of 3 senators. She's the senator from California. She was running for president. She dropped out. She, along with Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, put forward that Emergency Money for the People Act, that $2,000 stimulus plan. Here is her reasoning behind that. I want to dive into her comments. She talked about it, and she is trying to force the issue. So listen to Senator Harris on this issue.
So what I'm proposing, along with Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, is that during the course of the COVID crisis, where now we have over 40 million people who lost their jobs within the last 100 days, that they will receive $2,000 per individual, $4,000 as a couple, $2,000 per child a month through the term of the pandemic plus 3 months thereafter. And the point behind it that maybe some would think of as even a moral point, as it's just about humanitarian concerns and priorities. 40 million people plus lost their jobs within the last 100 days. Most did not have savings. See that statistic about can't afford a $400 unexpected expense. And this is through no fault of their own. And what we want, what is just the right thing to do, is that, one, the government should be here for the people in a moment of crisis. People should be able to count on their government to see them and create a safety net for them so that these families don't fall into poverty or further into poverty during the course of this pandemic, so that they can get back on their feet when it is over. And that's what this is about. And we all benefit from that, not only as a society that is a society that is one for all, but a society that relies on each other's well-being for our own well-being.
What she brings up there is an important point. That because, so this isn't just like a handout to poor people, which is such a shallow way of thinking about this, and this is what the Federal Reserve has been talking about, that by having a regular payment to the American people, you spend money in the economy. I told you the numbers yesterday, folks. We're looking at a $15 trillion plummet in our GDP. $15 trillion. It's been down over 50% right now. As I mentioned it before, remember this. When you're around the dinner table, you're talking to other people, you have that nasty uncle who just says, why do we want to give handouts to people? Right? We all know those people. It's not about that. It's about keeping our economy. We want to talk about being the greatest country in the world and being the most powerful country in the world. We're about to lose that if we haven't already. We're about to lose that big time. So what she's saying is that when money is in the hands of people, it fuels the economy. We've heard that from the Federal Reserve Chair himself, Jerome Powell. We know that. Republicans have said it. This is not new news. 70% of our economy is fueled by you and me. 70% our GDP is based on consumer spending. Buying groceries, buying gasoline, buying cars, okay, going shopping, going out to eat. That whole big circle is because we spend money. That's how our economy runs. That's how we hire people. That's how we, conquer unemployment in this country. It's how everything runs. So when she says getting money into the hands of people who need it, it's also helping to lift the economy up in other ways so that state and local governments have revenue to pay police officers and fire departments. I mean, look at the unrest right now. How many people want to become a policeman right now, a police officer? When state and local governments are crumbling and going bankrupt, they're not even going to be able to pay salaries. Where's pension money going to come from? So that's why we need an infusion of money in the hands of the American people. And I think there's enough now sentiment in Washington about this that it's going to happen. Now, she was also asked the question, and I thought it was a good one. She was asked the question, Senator Harris was, why just a one-time payment? Why just a one-time payment? And she had this to say about it.
Can you imagine someone saying, you need to only pay rent once, ever? You only need to buy groceries 1 week.
Right.
You only for months, right? But you need to buy groceries for 1 week. The reality of life is that people have recurring expenses. And the fact that we, during this crisis, only gave direct payments of one time and $1,200 during what has now been months of people being required to stay at home for the sake of public health, right? While many did not have paid sick leave, some are losing their jobs. Almost half, if not over half of America's workforce either runs a small business or works for a small business. Right, so you look at the connection there in terms of all the small businesses that are falling apart, and that also highlights the defects of the Paycheck Protection Program. So this is about saying, let us just see people based on how we all live. And the reality is that individuals, families have monthly bills.
Yeah. How many of you would love to pay rent one time, or pay your phone bill one time, or pay your electric bill one time? It doesn't happen. So this idea of this one-time payment, I don't know where this idea comes from. We tried this in past. We tried it under George W. Bush. We tried that, what was it, a $500 one-time payment? We tried it under, right after President Obama took office, after that collapse. And we did those stimulus bills payments as well, one-time payment. So we tried this before and it doesn't work. Other countries, though, have put in place the plan of having multiple payments on a regular basis every month to shore up their economies, and it's working. Again, look at Germany, a 5% unemployment. How are we over 20%? Because we got it wrong. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Thank goodness we have the ability to vote. So while the Senate is going to head on another vacation, and if the Republican leadership doesn't want to take this up until August, when they get back from their 4th of July recess, I mean, look at the protests that are happening in Washington right now. There is anger, not just about the killing of George Floyd, but think about the amount of anger there would be for people just being kicked out of their homes, because evictions are now kicking in again. Unemployment benefits are collapsing. People haven't gotten their unemployment benefits yet. The report overnight about unemployment benefits is disheartening. So many people standing out in the streets now holding up signs saying, I haven't gotten my unemployment benefits check. And they've been waiting on it since March from their states. Why? Because so many of these states are going bankrupt, falling apart. Because we have no help from the federal government for state and local governments right now. It's sickening. Absolutely sickening. So this push during the campaign for universal basic income came from Andrew Yang, right? Now, Andrew Yang dropped out of the race, and people called him a socialist and all of this, right, for universal basic income, so that everybody would have a universal paycheck. And people called it socialism, called it, let me know what you think about it, UBI as it's known. And he had the Yang Gang was out was supporting this. It sounded crazy at the time, right? Now you have Republicans and Democrats, bipartisan, talking about basically a universal basic income for a while, at least until we get out of this mess, which could push until next year. So what was laughed off just a few months ago is now gaining traction with a number of bills in the Senate and in the House. It's remarkable. So Andrew Yang, listen to his words. He got fiery, and he was asked about this and whether or not we should push for this $2,000 per month and why he thinks it's so important. So listen to Andrew Yang, who really created this idea to begin with.
Get it. You have to look at the opportunity we have right now. Our problems have accelerated where we've experienced 10 years worth of displacement in 10 weeks. But we have a real chance here to alleviate poverty. Right now, there are multiple bills that would put $2,000 a month into the hands of every American for the duration of the pandemic, which we all know may extend for months, even years. And I will suggest to everyone that if you actually pass that, it's not like you can take it away from tens of millions of Americans like 18 months from now, because our economy is going to be a shambles ongoing. I mean, we're facing a new Great Depression, but there are legislators that have bills on the table that if enough Americans get behind, we can pass this today.
Pass this today. So what is he talking about? What is Andrew Yang talking about? Well, he's talking about this, which is a petition at change.org. It has over 1.2 million people have signed it. Okay? They're trying to get to 1.5 million people. Now, I've put this link to the petition in the show description here, okay? It's at change.org. You can go over there. You can add your name to this if you're interested in the $2,000 per month to every American. It's called the Money for the People hashtag, and it is the Emergency Money for the People Act. This petition, I posted it this morning, has gotten a lot of people. A lot of you have already signed it. Again, it's in the show description of today's episode. Please go there, check it out, go sign it if you believe in $2,000 per month. And it would be retroactive back to March. It would also pay $2,000 per dependent in the family, up to 3 dependents. So, you know, teaching our kids math, right? What's a family of 5 times 2 is $10,000 per month for every American family that would qualify based on your adjusted gross income. And again, it would be retroactive back to March of this year when we started down this dark path. We don't have much more detail on it beyond that, but there is growing movement right now that if we could pass just that part of it, you know, even Bernie Sanders was saying, if we could just pass that piece of it, leave out the other chunks that are controversial, just focus on direct payments to the American people, we could get through this. And I absolutely agree. I think paying attention to what, you know, if we're paying attention to what's happening in Europe right now, that the stimulus will add high debt levels, but the alternative is, quote, much worse, according to the European Central Bank Vice President. The same thing was said here by Jerome Powell. It will be much worse. We can survive the debt crunch right now. We can get through that. What we can't, though, survive is people out of work, businesses crumbling, and our GDP collapsing. We will go from becoming, you know, being the world's superpower, you know, we can go back and forth with China on that, right, to being 5th, 6th, 7th in the world. We're already far behind the world in reading and math. I mean, we're just on the decline here, folks. You can see it. We're on the decline big time. And all of these fissures were here for a while. You know, we had this sort of artificial excitement with the market over the past few years, like, wow, it's record high in the market. And yet the haves and have-nots, there's a bigger chasm than ever in the United States right now. You know, and this coronavirus pandemic has struck African Americans worse than anybody. And the numbers are startling. The numbers out this morning are startling. 1 out of every 6 have lost their jobs. It has disproportionately affected African Americans in this country. Is that a shocker? Right? those that end up suffering the most just get hit again. We need this help. And, you know, if this $2,000 per month sort of universal basic income might be the answer, then I hope, you know, I hope there's some movement from the Senate. But again, I come back to this. If you just joined us late here, you have Senator making news yesterday, Senator Blunt, being blunt, saying that they're not likely to tackle this in June, and it might not happen until August. Might not happen until August. Yeah, that's what we need right now. August is when we need this thing passed, right? That sounds like a good idea. Take your time on vacation, guys. Enjoy some fun in the sun. Again, I come back to this guy. This is like the Senate, right? This is the Senate. Hey, we got a fire all around us. This is the Senate on vacation. Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. No trouble here. Nothing to see here. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about that, and thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. I do want to thank today's show sponsor, which is our friends over at Webull. They are giving you guys, they wrote to me last night, they are giving you guys 2 free stocks if you go to this link, morrisinvest.com/Webull. When you sign up, you open your account, you get a free stock, and then when you deposit $100 into the account, you're not spending $100, you're just depositing $100, you'll get a second free stock, and then you're entered in for a chance to win a 3rd premium Google stock. They're giving 100 shares of Google stock away, which is a lot of money, and they're giving it away for free. So you get those stocks valued up to $1,400 for free. If you go to morrisinvest.com/Webull is how you get those 2 free stocks. You have to use that link. It's in the show description as well, and you'll get that free money. Many of you have already opened your accounts. And with the stock market going up and up and up, you know, stock market's looking great. Now's the time to just get some free money from them. And they've been a great supporter of this show. And you can get those free stocks. It's, you know, if we need that extra cash right now, our thanks to them for supporting the show.